Welcome to a webinar today hosted by the McIlvaine Company, and we're going to be hearing from Golden Specialty people on the program to comply with the new and very important EPA 325 rules. And before we go any further, I'd like to have our participants introduce themselves. Maybe we'll just go from left to right here. So Megan, would you like to start out and tell us who you are, and then we'll follow with James and Scott.
Sure. I'm Megan Stroud. I'm a project manager and LIMS manager here with Golden Specialty. I started back in April. That's when I got into air quality here, and before that I was at an environmental lab in Houston doing wastewater, soil, and other oils and chemicals.
Well, you probably picked a good time to hook up with Golden Specialty with this EPA rule going to be a lot of work for a lot of people, so it's probably good timing. James, what about yourself?
So I'm James Haynes. I've been with the company almost 10 years now. I'm the quality and safety manager. Before that, just kind of general lab project manager, LIMS administrator, lab technician, you name it, I've done it. Yeah, I manage the quality aspect, report reviews, data handling, all kinds of stuff like that.
And there's going to be lots of data handling with this new rule, so I guess that's going to keep you pretty busy.
Oh yeah,
Scott?
Absolutely. There's a lot to keep track of and a lot to make sure that it's in line.
Yeah. So, and that, of course, is going to be the challenge, I think, with a lot of these refineries. There's so much that has to be accomplished here that having the support for a company like yours is going to be vital. Scott, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Scott Swigert with Golden Specialty. I've been actually co-founder. I've been with the company 20 years, a little over 20 years, and we initially started out as a source emissions test company, conducting field sampling and analysis of stacks and sources. And as of April of this year, we sold the source test division, and we're focusing strictly on the laboratory.
I see. So, do you think that you're geared up to be able to handle this pretty substantial opportunity here?
Yes, we invested in analytical equipment early on. We devoted to automated systems, the ability to take on multiple samples at one time. I think our tube system is 100 tubes. Is that right, James? 100 tubes a day?
Something like that is the capability, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Yeah. Well, let's start out by hearing why use Golden here. That sounds like a good starting point.
Yeah, where do you want to start? We've been in business a long time.
I think I pulled up the first slide here, and I thought maybe we just go through that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've focused strictly on air analysis and sampling. The laboratory was developed originally as an internal system to our need as a stack testing organization to provide high quality analytical air analysis to the source testing main business.
And accurate results and efficient service being the byword there.
Correct.
Yeah, I've got some interesting slide technology here. So we're now on to sample kits, contents, transport, and delivery. And let's start with the sample kits.
Yeah, James, you want to cover that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's just a kit that we've developed that has basically everything you need all in one place, so that the refinery doesn't have to worry about it at all. So we show up on site or ship it straight to you, and it's got your tubes, it's got gloves, it's got your paperwork, all kinds of stuff in there, so that you receive that, you carry it out in the field, you install your tubes, and that's all you need.
So it looks like a complete solution for the samples there.
Yep.
And then,
that's the idea.
So after the um, sample is collected, then it's shipped back to Golden, or it actually can be picked up by Golden personnel. Of course, you people are in the Houston area. Would you be picking up samples in other areas as well, or would those just be shipped to you?
Yeah, it kind of depends on location, but obviously anything around here, we can go and pick it up. And if it's far enough away that shipping would be easier, then you can just ship it straight to us, and that'll work too.
Oh, okay, that sounds like a plan here.
And there's two kits, Robert. There's a kit, we just refer them to as kits A and B. While one is out deployed on the client's facility, collecting data passively over a period of time. The other one is either at the laboratory being analyzed and conditioned for the next sampling event, or arriving at the client's property ready for them to deploy it and collect the first set of tubes and package them up and send them to the lab.
Yeah, so it's a continuous process. You've always got tubes then available as the others are being tested. That makes sense.
Yep.
And maybe just review specifically again the contents of the sample kit.
Yeah, Megan, you want to cover that?
Sure. We have everything organized in this case. All the tubes that you need, depending on how many shelters you have, which is based on the size of your facility. EPA states rules for how many you need there. Desiccant packages so that the humidity doesn't affect your samples too intensely. Gloves to take it for industrial hygiene. Anti-static bags, the clipboard so that you can write your chain of custody, according information when you sampled it and the time and date, and some pens to write that down.
Got to have it recorded, that's for sure.
There.
And the sample tube sets.
So the tubes themselves, I mean, it's a specific kind of tube that they require. It's got a sorbent material, which is what's going to absorb your VOCs in there. It's got, on the top picture, you can see it's got the brass caps. So those are the storage caps so that it doesn't actually collect anything if it's not installed. And then when you do install it, you're going to put that diffusion cap on there so that it can collect into the tube over the period of time that you've got. And then once it's done collecting, you just replace that cap with the storage cap again, and it's set and ready to return to the lab.
How long does it take someone to go through that procedure?
The actual taking off of the caps, I mean, it's 10 seconds. It's pretty simple.
Pretty simple to do. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've got either 12 or 24, up to 24 samples that have to be taken. Is that correct?
Right. Depending on the size of the facility, or, the regulations say exactly how and where you're supposed to have your sampling stations placed. Yeah.
And that brings us to those sampling stations. Let's go into that a little bit.
So your sampling stations are going to be around the perimeter of your fence line. Again, they have specific requirements that we'd be able to get into about where exactly they need to go. The shelter that we have is basically just a little hood that you clip your tubes on the inside in there, and the shelter protects it from the elements, rain, wind, etc. But they can still collect the air that comes in under there. It says, so for 1 in every 10 sampling shelters, you have to have a duplicate tube. So you have your tubes spaced all around the facility, and then at a few of those, you have an extra tube just to make sure that you're getting precise, good measurements on everything that you're collecting. You also need to have the meteorological data because we have to be able to correct the results to standard conditions. So we need to measure barometric pressure, temperature, stuff like that. And that'll all get recorded on the chain of custody when we get the tubes back.
How much back and forth discussion and work is there to make sure that the refinery is following these guidelines as they should?
Once the locations are established, it becomes pretty minimal. It's just a work in process, routine work for the next 18 months. The only precautionary thing that we recommend, especially down here in the south, where wasps can migrate into closed areas, is to look underneath the hood before you reach your hand up and underneath there.
Yeah, that's very good advice. That's for sure. And is it pretty fail-safe? I mean, in other words, in terms of accuracy of the samples, what could go wrong that someone might do that would give you an erroneous reading?
We haven't really had anybody come back with any concerns about any of that for the most part. You know, every now and then there'll be somebody that doesn't like the numbers they see, but there's not really you know, something that you can identify as a cause for that. One of the main things that we would kind of caution about would be that on the tubes, that cap that you have to screw and unscrew, it can actually be over tightened, which can cause some problems. But as long as you don't do that, it's pretty much good to go.
James, we did have the flooding event here from Harvey that caused some of our clients some analysis issues. Can you describe that?
Yeah, they had some concerns. We had all the flooding from the hurricane, and there were people worried that that might have affected their tubes. I don't remember that it actually affected their results at all, because the shelters themselves are pretty high up, like you saw in that picture. So unless the flooding actually comes up to where that shelter is, I don't think that it should affect it, or if the shelter gets knocked over or something like that. But generally, they're pretty secure on the fences or the posts where they're installed.
So I guess you get the opposite problem in California with your fires and potential alternative methods of VOC generation other than from the refinery itself. So
yeah,
we're specific. So we're looking for benzene. It's you know, when you have other organics in the area, we haven't seen anything that's disturbing the analytical for the benzene.
Yeah, so that's a good point. You're not generating benzene in a forest fire, I guess. Okay. And then your sample collection procedures. Let's go over those again.
Megan, you want to cover that?
Sure. So it's going to be in the case, and you'll remove the sampling tube from its storage container. You'll put it under the shelter so it's protected. It stays there and passively collects your air over a 14-day period, in which case our courier will have come back with the clean set of tubes that were clean, had been analyzed and were cleaned in the lab, and they'll take the ones that had been sampled over a 14-day period, collect those to bring to the lab, and reinstall the clean ones in for the next 14-day period.
Seems clear enough, yeah. And then post-sample collection, let's get into that. The handling of collected samples.
So that's our procedure here in the lab. You know, they have specifications for you don't want to have them too warm when they're being transported. They need to get to the lab for analysis within 30 days of collection. But you know, that should be pretty simple since you can just ship them straight back to us. Here in our lab, we receive them in our sample receiving area. Every set of samples gets a number, and then every individual tube also gets a number, and all that stuff gets recorded on the chain of custody. Everything on the chain of custody, including all the meteorological stuff, tube numbers, hour numbers, collection dates and times, and things like that, will all go into our database, and that all ends up going into the report once we get to that part.
Seems clear. Yeah. And so this is what the sheet looks like. Go ahead.
Yes, this is the chain of custody form that we've been referencing. This is where you can have your shelter number written down, and it's associated with the tube identification number. You'll have your site name, address. This will all be documented. It gets added in your report. the information we really need is the installation date and time, your shelter number. If you have your field blanks and duplicates, you're going to want to check which one of those shelters you've made your duplicate and field blank. Then your recovery date 14 days later in time. And like James said, we need the temperature and pressure to correct the results for that. So that information is pertinent as well. When you relinquish it to the lab personnel, you would sign off the date and time, and they will also sign off when they receive them from you.
In terms of the difference between the visual printed word and computerization, is this data given to you in a written printed form, and is it then incorporated in a computerized fashion, or just I just missed something here in that?
Yes, sir. This form right here can be printed off and handwritten on, because we'll need signatures after it has been written on all the date information that they need, collection. Then we will scan it and add it to the end of the report. But they'll be writing on a hard copy of this.
I see. Okay, that makes that clear. As you say, you need the signatures.
Yes, they could use a computer, but we'd want the signatures actually.
Okay. And then here's how you do your analysis. Then tell us about how that's done.
So on what you see in the picture here, the sort of tower-looking thing on the right is where the tubes actually get installed, and it's a thermal desorption system. So it uses heat to pull the VOCs, or the benzene specifically, out of the tube, and then transfers it into the instrument, which is that guy on the left. And then from there, it gets focused into the instrument and analyzed, and that's where we get our numbers.
And in terms of accuracy of all this, is there anything that can go wrong again, or is this pretty fail-safe?
It's pretty fail-safe. Once they're installed in there, there's not really a whole lot that'll go wrong. You really don't have to do anything manually except for installing the tubes themselves. And as you can see here, we have a whole bunch of QA procedures that we follow, 6 or 7 different steps along the way that all confirm that we're getting a good analysis, a good injection, a good pull from the tube each step of the way.
And it's this QA procedure that ends up telling you whether or not the analysis that was just completed is accurate or not. So it's done before the samples are analyzed, and then in between at sequential steps, there's a second source check that is completed.
Okay.
And then after 10 samples, we do a post CCV.
So here it is all in sequence. Let's go through that.
Yep.
So we start with the sampling prep. Here in the lab, obviously we have to prep the tubes ahead of time to make sure that they're ready to send out to you. We prep all of the tubes. We put them in the kits. We send you a kit. You take the kit out in the field and install all of your tubes. So for that 14-day period, somewhere before the end of that 14-day period, we ship you the second kit. So when you go out to remove the tubes from the first set, you're also installing the tubes for the second set. So once you have all those tubes from the first set, you send them to us. We analyze them, recertify them, re-clean them, all that stuff, and get them ready to send back to you and return back for that middle step there.
Clear enough. And then the post-analysis reporting.
Yep. So there's a lot that goes into our report format, but it's all on our end. We put the data into our LIMS, and we click a button, and out comes your report. So it's all built ahead of time. There's not really a whole lot that you need to worry about. So we do our analysis and send you that nice little report with all the numbers in there. We do also have the option, if you want to, we can modify it. We can change it to look, or say however you want it to look. We have different levels of reporting that we can do, different deliverable electronic items that we can give you. Yep.
So some options.
Touch a little bit on the next slide.
Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah. Oh, so here's the additional report data on request. Yeah, go through that then. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that what you're seeing on the right there is our sort of normal reporting format, but we have the option to change that up however you would want to. So if there's something you don't like, if you want a different order, different units, different calculations, as long as they're approved by EPA, we can do whatever we want to within there. Our normal report format is a level 2, which will give you the data along with the chain of custody that we received. We have the option of doing a level 3, which gives you all of the raw data from the analysis, the chromatography straight from the instrument, or a level 4 report, which gives you all of the calibration data, all the initial calibration. There's a lot of stuff that goes into a level 4 report if you want one. We normally do electronic PDF copies of the reports, and we'll just email those to you. But if you feel like you need hard copies that you need to, file away, or if you just like to see a hard copy in front of you, we can do that. And then the EDDs, the electronic data, we can also do that. All kinds of different formats that are available. So again, if you need to take your data and put it into your own database or upload it or something like that, we can generate files for you that'll do that.
Is there an additional cost if you need the level 4 report or some of these other variables here?
Generally, yeah. It depends on obviously what exactly you need. The level 4 report specifically is pretty in-depth and detailed. It's a minor cost though compared to the rest of the reporting process.
And then the final question here, these refineries are now under the gun to start reporting, and I imagine there's going to be a number of them that are still trying to get their ducks in a row. Are you going to be able to get them in compliance in the time frame that they need to do so if they were to come to you tomorrow and initiate the conversations?
We could get them shelters right away. We have shelters ready to set up. We'd have tubes cleaned and sent out. They need to start sampling by the 18th. So yeah, we could certainly get everything in a row and work quickly to do that.
And then I guess another question I had is longer term as some of these people switch vendors. What do you think are going to be the criteria that would lead someone to pick Golden Specialty as the vendor to be working with here? Would it be reliability? Go ahead.
Service is certainly what we're known for. Taking care of the customer, being responsive to their needs, communicating. The accuracy of our report is, I think, unparalleled in our industry. A lot of it has to do with the attention to detail from the analysts, to the report writers. But the LIM system that Megan is in charge of has gone through a tremendous overhaul in the time that she's been here. And that's really the heart of the laboratory report, is how all that data comes together.
Well, I think it's been a very informative interview here. We'll be posting this up on YouTube, and you'll be able to link it from your website as well. We will be holding a webinar on this subject, not actually on this subject, but on the whole refinery decisions program here on January 10th. And then we want to continue to pursue the whole fugitive emissions problem, and of course the California challenge to measure 15 different toxics and so forth. So there'll be lots of other things to be talking to you about. So I'd like to thank the three of you for joining us today, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
Thank you. And this is Bob McIlvaine signing off.